So Ravi's book, as I said, is about the super rich people in Delhi right now, the wheelers and dealers. He describes shenanigans of Delhi. These are things that we have heard. I mean, in Hyderabad, we get to hear of them. Some of us who travel to Delhi have friends there, know a little more about their lives and describes them. It's all about high life, high society, their parties, there's sex, there's scandal, there's infidelity, there's, scruples thrown to the four winds and all of that. That's Ravi's book. And my first question to Ravi would be, Ravi, how did you know about these lives? Did you know people closely? Have you been to these parties? Was it from the gossip that you read? Do these characters in your book, they look very real. Are they fashioned about real characters? Can people recognize them?
Well, I wouldn't write a book if I didn't know enough about it. I mean, what I was writing about. So let's put it that way. And I wouldn't write. Yeah, a lot of the characters are a mix and match of characters I know in Delhi, but they are not completely the same person. If you know what I mean, that would be rude.
So I'm sure people who know what's happening would recognize some characters and some incidents there.
Doubt it.
Okay. Well, yeah. Would you like to say a little more about your book? Why did you do it?
All right. A lot of people write about Delhi as, Delhi of Punjabis, Nuvarish, Delhi of Old Delhi, where you eat, you have kawalis and parathas and. But there is a Delhi which, like every city has, which is not usually known to outsiders, except what is read in the pages or something you look through, like not a looking glass, but through the window, and it's all bright lights in big city. But there are people out there, there are real people out there, who read real lives. The only thing is that it may seem, the lives of the bizarre, the lives of the rich and famous are as bizarre to everybody. I don't know why it is. I mean, we lead lives which could be crazy, but people wouldn't say, oh yeah, okay, that's fine. But somebody else, somebody who's rich does it, you say, wow, this guy is crazy. He's really out there. So Delhi, I am familiar with this to a certain extent. So I said, okay, why not kind of record it? And I had in fact, I was taking a break between two books. That's when I wrote this. I wrote it for a lark. So it starts with this guy who's a very aging playboy who lives in Lutyens, Delhi. And the thing about Lutyens, Delhi was that, which is called the Delhi's Old Rich. So the houses, even then that was real estate as much as it is today. So the rich people of Delhi who got rich on working for the British as construction, real estate, etc., they bought all those houses at throwaway prices. So the rents which kind of accrued from them eventually made the coming generation very rich. So they didn't have to work. I know a lot of people don't work at all, nothing. So all they do is that, so this guy anyway is an aging playboy whose girlfriends get, younger and younger as he grows older and older. So he all he does is he just parties, has sex, drinks, and wakes up late. That's all he does. And he's a wannabe fashion designer, but that's just because he has to do something, though he doesn't do anything. So anyway, so he's going for a party, has to go for this party with his girlfriend, and she ODs. So he doesn't know what to do with the body, right? So he's never had a situation as to what you do with the body. So he calls his chap and says, look, hide the body because I have to go to this party, otherwise it look bad. So then what happens? That becomes a completely roller coaster kind of, right? So that's basically what the book is about. It's about 3 murders, a couple of elopements, lots of drinking, it's great fun actually. But there's also, through it, there is also a real human being there. A real human being who feels regret, who feels sorrow, who loves, who's loved, who gets hurt, who is happy. It's also a real human being there. So when we judge people, we are so judgmental as human beings. We cannot help it. That's our nature. We would judge a dog. We judge everything we judge. That's fine. So ultimately, what's it about? It's about, a city, whether it be Hyderabad, whether it be Delhi, it's beyond brick and mortar. There are people who lived, before us. There are people who live along with us. There will be even after we're dead. So what is a city? A city is an idea, right? A city is more than buildings. It's more than food. Okay, Hyderabad and Delhi have the similarity. One is food and one is buildings, right? I'm being very facetious, but the fact of the matter is true. I mean, Hyderabad has given the world Halim and Hyderabadi biryani, which I die for. Or Delhi has given butter chicken and, what is it, Red Fort? So the fact of the matter is that, as facetious as it may seem, there are some eternal things which you go through which you read the city, which you see the idea of the city, read the idea of the city. That's how you know what it is. How do I know what Mughal India felt like? Do I? Or I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. I mean, I don't know about you guys in Hyderabad. You really know when the first Hyderabadi biryani was cooked, when who ate it? Maybe you do. So that's the whole idea behind the book.
Well, I think we'll know about that from Sirish's book. Just one more question before we go to Sirish. I also noticed that you very nicely peppered it with a new age spiritual guru.
Uh, is it real?
I'm asking you. Well, there are many like that, and you know.
Well, I did meet one gentleman some time ago at a party, it must be about a few years ago, who had this lovely black cassock, like almost like Rasputin, had long hair with a like nice white streak hair, very closely trimmed beard, very nice, handsome looking guy, must be about 6'3", who claimed he was a Siddhar, half, I think, I'm not mistaken, Italian, because he spoke English with an Italian accent. I think it's a complete fake. So he was actually had come to Delhi, and he had his, I don't know, patroners and he was actually looking to buy an ashram. You know, I mean, so he was looking for somebody who could donate a farmhouse where he could start an ashram. It's almost like, and who could invest in it. I mean, he's actually looking at angel investors on ashram we didn't have. I just blew my mind. Yes, to that extent.
I just before I finish, discussing your book, I also noticed that your book is has just takes one part of it. It's not crime and punishment. It's all crime. I don't know whether the punishment comes. I don't want to talk about it, but that's again reflection of what's actually happening in society. But I'd very briefly go for the first time, not again, to Sirish's book. Sirish, you've written about your book talks about life 500 years ago, and it's really baffling. How did you put it together 500 years ago? How did you delve into their lives? And you talk about wealth again, super rich, what their lives were about, what were their obsessions, people who've had, mistresses in 3-digit numbers, and how did they keep the balance between their wives and the mistresses, or between mistresses, and what is it that pushed them? That was another life of decadence. So how did you construct this? Because what Ravi said was important, that, a city is not just monuments and buildings and parks and roads, but it's people and it's their lives. So you give us a glimpse into their lives. How did you collect those stories?
Actually, it's not 3 digits, it's 4 digits.
4 digits, can you imagine? So their turn comes once in how many years? Who knows?
So they had gardens where they cultivated aphrodisiacs. They had doctors who wrote books on aphrodisiacs so that they can use the kings. And what I realized about cities is not about the buildings, but about the people and the kind of lives they lead. And the really wealthy, as Scott Fitzgerald says, are beyond our understanding what to think. Like Hyderabad was super wealthy. In Delhi's wealth now, whatever it might be, you can't imagine a queen would sleep on a bed which was made of 440 kilograms of gold.
Did you hear that?
Just gold.
440 kilograms of gold. Take it closer.
Huh?
The comfort
No, it
came
will be
from the
huge.
mattresses.
So the floor was tiled with gold, means it was plated with gold. So, and I'm not making up all this thing. It took me 10 years to research all this information, and a lot of information came from authors who had, travelers who came from abroad. And I was really shocked, and actually I was worried in the sense a lot of these kings are greatly respected. You can't make fun of them. You can't make fun of their religiosity. They're very personal. People really like them, and there might be descendants of those kings living now. So I really had to weigh my words in a very calibrated way to say everything. Like suppose this queen was having an affair with one of the courtiers, I needed to know exactly what period of time and all that thing. So, and one of the things that while I was writing this book, I really realized the decadence is amazing. In the sense, the king had mistresses in 4 digits, and the city had a register of, the city police commissioner had a register of number of women who were courtesans and prostitutes.
They had a
That,
different kind of register then.
right. So that had 20,000 names. And there were a lot of toddy shops, and every morning some thousands of ponies with leather bags filled with what is called kallu would come to the city for the people to drink. And one of the interesting thing I noticed is, I learnt about it, if a girl is getting married, the parents would take a written permission from the would-be husband that this woman will be allowed to drink toddy, and she would be allowed to go out and meet her friends at her choice.
Smart women, my God. Much to learn.
So, so when and how did these people become wealthy? There is also a fact, like in the sense, not everybody is wealthy. They were poor, who were really dirt poor, and the coinage was pure gold. The north didn't have gold coinage. We had gold coinage. The gold coinage would be very small coin, weighing about 3.6 grams of gold. So all the revenue was collected in that. And that's why the kingdom was fabulously wealthy. And to give you an idea of the wealth of this kingdom would be like one of the travelers who came from France, Tavernier, he bought one diamond here called Blue. It's called Big Blue or something like that. So if you calculate the weight of gold he paid for it, it would be 147 kilograms. So that's a huge, means I'm talking in terms of gold. So today I don't think we see gold as just beyond an ornament kind of a thing. They had mounds of gold. And one of the courtiers who was named Mir Jumla, he moved over to the Mughals, and he was responsible for the destruction of Golconda kingdom. He gifted Shah Jahan a diamond called, which later came to be called Kohinoor. So the Kohinoor traveled from here to there. And and I thought Hyderabad was much more systematic, in the sense Shah Jahan lost his throne because one of his doctors prescribed him aphrodisiacs. So he took too much of it, and he had a problem. So that is why he couldn't show up on the window or sill or whatever. And that's why Aurangzeb could start his rebellion and destroy his kingdom.
Sirisha, give us a picture of Machilipatnam, because you know many of us have gone to Machilipatnam, and today you see a kind of a dirty beach, very black soil, and you know you always wonder that such a place so close to Hyderabad, and Hyderabad has nowhere to go if you have just a day or 2 days, you know, close by. And Machilipatnam can be developed into a very nice place, but there's nothing there, dirt. Your book describes Machilipatnam as being one of the most important and wealthy ports. So tell us how that wealth came and what was that about?
So Machilipatnam was the main port for Golconda kingdom. All the fabrics that today we take for granted, like the kalamkari art and all those things, are evolved in Machilipatnam because they soaked in the influences, the Persian influences and the local influences. And Machilipatnam port was one of the hub for trade before Calcutta, before Bombay, before Surat, around the time of Surat. Both have evolved. And this port generated fabrics which were Machilipatnam. And now you know a lot of villages near Machilipatnam where they make handicrafts, which we call kalamkari. And Srikalahasti is one more place. There are a lot of women who wear saris would know the designs, and they can make out the thing. So these were the clothes which the people from Spice Islands were willing to sell to the Dutch traders and the British traders. Only if these clothes are given, they're willing to sell the spices. They're not willing to sell the spices for anything else. So that is why the Golconda kingdom became much more wealthy. And the things that were exported from Golconda kingdom were like iron, which was like artisanal steel, and fabrics. There were carpets. Today we don't imagine that the carpets were woven in Warangal, but carpets were woven in Warangal and Khammam. And steel was made in a place which we now call Nizamabad and Indore. and Nirmal. These places were where steel was made, artisanal steel, whose formula could not be cracked even by the best physicists and chemists in the UK and US till about 10 years back. Because these steel that was made was highly tensile, means it was hard, and it was malleable also, means it would bend. Means if you're waving, it won't break. It would bend, but it would not break. So they had some technology which was called woods or whatever. And so all these things turned this kingdom into fabulously wealthy. And it reflected on the people and the lives they led. So even if the king is very spiritual, he would be indulgent. And one of the kings who founded Hyderabad, he lists the names of 17 mistresses, and he describes their beauty, he describes their clothes, he describes the plays with which he would play with them, and he describes the sweets he ate, and he's talking about biryani. I didn't find a reference to biryani. Pulao was served on Fridays near the Qutub Shahi tombs for everybody. Whoever could come can have that pulao. And near Makkah Masjid, people could come in and have food. They would cook food in terms of tons. And only after Aurangzeb conquered Golconda kingdom, that cooking of khichdi was stopped there. And Aurangzeb instead liked khichdi. He liked khichdi and coffee. He was a very simple person.
You must tell them about what was discovered. Was it in 1971 when archaeologists found Syrian wine?
So these people would be having wine and arak also. Arak is actually a Central Asian name because it means fermented made milk. So these people would be making arak using fermented fruits or whatever. And in 1970s, when the archaeologists were researching near Golconda Fort, they discovered a distillery. They discovered Syrian wine jars, and they discovered chess pieces. So the king led a very dainty life in the sense. Today we can't imagine somebody just sitting, having coffee, smoking a pipe. And tobacco was not supposed to be exported from Golconda kingdom. It was prized. It was supposed to be kept within the kingdom for the use of the people. It was not supposed to be exported out of the kingdom. So people here were smoking tobacco and pipes and whatever.
Well, one thing nice about Machilipatnam is at least the kalamkari continues, the Warangal carpets continue, right? And I don't know about steel. We must have lost that, right?
The steel technology is completely lost.
And that's what was used for Damascus
Yes, that
sword?
is the swords. The steel was used for Damascus swords, and it was highly prized by everywhere in the world. And these people, number of foundries were discovered, but nothing beyond that. They could not crack the code how they did the steel.
Tell us what we lost in food. Biryani continues, but I'm sure we've lost a lot more. You described sweets. Do those continue?
So they describe, no, most of the food traditions continue. Means we have not lost anything in terms of food. Like sheer korma we still eat sheer korma. We still eat pulao. Pulao is much more purer form of biryani. Biryani came much little later, and the name is very popular and all that. But pulao is much more, it's much more Persian dish, and it is much more simpler to cook, as people who cook know. Biryani is a little more complicated, and it was a little specialized dish. Now, because of the restaurants, it has become very popular. Everybody eats and all that. People cook at home, but it can't match the thing that is cooked in a big scale kind of a thing. And biryani, incidentally, is credited to the creation of the woman from Delhi, Noorjahan.
Yeah. So, friends, this gives you a little description of what these two books are about. We'd like this to be an interactive session, and we're all voyeuristic. We love to look at lives of people. So if you have any question about the lives of the super rich Panjus in Delhi,
I want to add on to something you said.
Yeah.
You know, all of us are curious, right? I mean, even the most banal of us, even many of us who even lead banal lives. But we still like to know where we're living and what happened before. The thought always crosses our minds. So even the humblest of us, we have imagination. That's the only gift we have as we'll go through life. Nothing else. Everything else goes. So if you're really an archaeologist of memory, I'm sorry, it sounds kind of rather highfalutin, but I actually mean it. If you're an archaeologist of memory, you can actually call forth what existed before. Like sometimes when I drive through to my office, I have to pass the ruins of a part of the Red Fort, right? So apparently the river Yamuna used to come to the walls, and you could imagine the king sitting on one of those pavilions overlooking the river, which used to go on and on and on forever, right? And today it's not there. I mean, today it's just a ruin, and there's a ring road, and there's some cemeteries like the Gandhis and stuff like that, and there is a dirty patch of water called the Yamuna, right? But so it didn't mean that it wasn't there. I mean, just because it is lost does not destroy the validity of its existence in time or its relevance even today. I mean, everything which is past can be applied to today. So, what would be interesting if any of us could carry out this exercise, which I do a lot. When I go to a place, I try to imagine, oh man, what would this have been like? I mean, do it would be kind of interesting. So, no, not just rich Punjabis, but anything else.
With this, we'd like to open this session for question answers. So, would you like to? I asked Serish. Would you like to read something from your book, Serish? I'm still wondering. Mistresses in 4 digits. My God, it's quite a bit to handle.
I realized that they had even Ashoka had like mistresses in four series, but he didn't sleep with all of them. Many of them actually died without even having touched the emperor once because it's practically impossible. Number one, and number two is that a huge part of the harem was support staff. It was not just women, nubile women waiting to kind of get laid by the emperor. No.
Yeah, part of the decadence to show off. I can afford so many people. Yeah.
Would always be, who had a pretty daughter, it was always kind of, she would be taken and the family would be honored because she was in the emperor's harem. So it's also economic, social. It's not just a straight thing of emperor saying, okay, I want this chick put in my harem. No, it wasn't like that.
So I'd like to read a little bit of it so that I try to communicate what happened. Like in Islam, they fast for Ramzan and they don't drink and all that thing. So at the end of Ramzan, Muhammad Quli, who was the fifth king, writes a poem saying, "The moon is in the heaven, pour me wine, please pour me wine. The fasting is gone, my Saki, now this goblet will be mine." So even at the end of the Ramzan, he's hoping to have a little bit of wine. And another poet from Gujarat came to Deccan and he writes, "Ahmed, the beauties of the Deccan here, that wonderful dark complexion. You now regard Deccan as your Gujarat." So, and he describes the women with their clothes, their jewelry, and how they appeared and all that. And even the travelers who came from abroad, they were fascinated by the cloth that we have. Like nowadays, there is this thing about weeding out Persian and Arabic words. The word cotton comes from Arabic, kutn, okay? And so many words have come from abroad. And like for example, in west coast of India and the center, northern India, we have a fruit called Mosambi. It's a name for, it's a corruption of Mozambique, right? And whereas whereas we people in Andhra, we call it Battai Pandu. Battai Pandu came from the old name of Batvia, which is Jakarta. So the Dutch got us here, so we call Battai Pandu because it's a corruption of Batvia. It was brought from there. And because Mozambique has come from Mozambique, Portuguese brought it there. So it is called Mozambique. So like that, there is a interconnectedness of culture, civilization, and many of the clothes that we wear now. The first king, what he wore, can be easily traced to be what we now call sherwani, which is like you button down and all those things. And one of the most prized fabrics was a transparent cotton fabric, so that the king can actually see how the woman is looking like. Very perverse, but It used to happen. And he was the one, and try to understand this, he was the only one who can patronize the artisans to create such stuff. A lot of loss of our woven heritage and architectural heritage and all these things happened during Aurangzeb's time because he was a Puritan. He shut down all these things and he didn't like, he wouldn't drink. And one of the reasons of him not drinking is he lived for a very long time. He was born in 1619. He lived till 1707. Okay, it's a very long period of time he lived. That's because he didn't drink. The other Mughal kings would drink, so they didn't live a very long life. And they had a very different way of looking at life. Like even the first Mughal king, the Babur who came here, so he says, Baba, you live only once. So that was the philosophy that drove him. So even among the kings in Hyderabad and even the people, the pleasure principle was one of the key elements. So that's, while reading and researching, I discovered they're given over to pleasure. Everybody, even the poor, could afford to drink toddy, and they would drink toddy. And they led a very good life from their standard. Because and now we're talking about papers and all that. None of these people could produce papers because there are wars, famines and all that. You can't produce documents. Even now, in coastal areas, people can't produce documents.
Coming back to names, Serish, Ravi had this question too. Machilipatnam has to do with machli, fish?
No.
Fish city, huh? Masulipatnam, okay. Okay. So this became corrupted to Machilipatnam. Well, should we take questions or would you like to read something? Okay. I think we have 10 minutes and it's only fair that we...
Okay, this is, I just give you a little lowdown. The guy I is the protagonist. His name is Charlie. Second is this guy called Kokrav, who's the local peddler. And Buffet Bhatt is an extremely fat foodie who does food events, right? So, I mean, he finds Buffet Bhatt dead in the loo, right? So now it starts here. As I stood by the door of the Portaloo, I figured God hadn't loved Buffet Bhatt's tits enough to save him. God hadn't even given him a dignified kickoff. Ratty came back, pushing his way through the gathered warriors, and peered inside once more. He then rushed away. The ecstasy seemed to have worn off him, or maybe it was just a joint. I saw him throwing up into the hedge, pruned in the shape of an ostrich. Delhi is big on animal hedges. I even saw an emu hedge.
Why did you choose to write about a flamboyant person when you could have also chosen to say write about a power-hungry person, the life of a politician or a businessman who's power-hungry? Why flamboyance?
No, you see, the thing is that people have written on the lives of politicians, right? You know, India doesn't really have a Gay Gatsby kind of a book. It doesn't. I mean, if you read this, it's dirtier than Gay Gatsby. And this is all real. And this is not a society normal readers access. So I just wanted to kind of, and I was familiar with it. So I like writing about things I'm familiar with or I'm crazy about. You know, that's why I wrote this. Okay, this is, so you have Charlie, who's this, really cynical guy, but at the same time, he was in love once, right? And his wife is dead. So I was thrilled to be reminded of the chocolate in a voice and the touch of a cool hand that was extended towards me. I stared at it stupidly. She laughed, reached out and took my hand. You look like someone in Great Gatsby, perhaps, Jay, madly in love with me, ready to do anything for my sake, she declared. I'm not in love with you, I protested. I don't fall in love. You don't know it yet, she said in an amused tone. I would grow to know very well. She skipped down the steps and got into my Aston Martin before I could open the door for her. I don't fall in love, I repeated, starting the car, having recovered a bit of my composure. You did, yesterday, but not stupid mad like Gay Gatsby. Kiss me stupidly. How does one do that? Here, let me show you, she said, and dragged my face down to her mouth. Her lips were cool and warm at the same time, and her cheeks and hair smelled like an exotic garden. After that moment, we were rarely apart. We got married 6 months later. Oh, it was such a long time ago.
My question to you, Serish, is that what made you, this is your first book. Obviously, from the sound of it, it seems like non-fiction. historical, uh, documentary research. So, what made you pick this period and this subject? You could have picked, so many things, but what made you pick this period and this subject?
So I'm a reporter in Hyderabad, and I came here about 20 years back from Bombay. But when I went around the city had some buildings, and people, if you ask somebody, this is Charminar, it was built by the fifth king. That's it. Beyond that, you will not get any information, right? This is the Golconda Fort, it was built by the Qutub Shahis. That's it. We will not get any information beyond that. So around 2002 or 2000, the Nizam jewelry exhibition came to Hyderabad. It was at the Salajang Museum. They had fabulous pieces of jewelry, emeralds, diamonds, pearls, Basra pearls, which was big as marbles and all that. So, and I realized this tradition of wearing of this jewelry must have gone back. And I started thinking about writing this, chronicling this, trying to understand what kind of people were these who would live and dress like this. Where did they get this much money? Any point of time, it's all wealth. Emeralds, diamonds will never be cheap. They have always been expensive. They have been priced all over the place. So then I started researching on it and tried to get more information. And I realized there's not much information. If you research on Hyderabad, the one book that everybody goes to is written by somebody called Harun Khan Sherwani. He has done extensive research. It's a 700-page book of Qutub Shahi dynasty. But the book is written with a perspective and with certain sets of beliefs. I wanted to write a book which is clear, which talks to the lay reader nowadays. Like we are not. I don't think we should be trapped with the blinkers of religion or anything. We are not sitting in a position of judgment. It will be ahistorical to think, oh, he had 1,000 mistresses. It is wrong. He belongs to a different period. What he did at that point of time it's okay with that period of time. Now somebody does something like it is wrong. So there were medieval punishments. So these things happened at that point of time. We can't implement those now. And we can't judge them from this perspective. So as I was reading about other more amount of information, and I also made one more thing. Like I was reporting, I was making mistakes. In the sense, I wouldn't even know the chronology of the kings because it was given wrongly, right? I thought, okay, this is not the done thing. Let me do some research. Let me have some information which is authentic. And that is why I began research. And this book is a result of last 10 years research.
Yeah, ma'am.
Observation with a question inbuilt into it. Both of you are talking about, writing about cities which are very old in history. In fact, Delhi is talked about as layer upon layer of a place. And you've taken the very contemporary and a small segment of it. Whereas Serish Nanisetti has gone back to history as he explained why. But both are living, vibrant cities which are constantly changing and evolving. So would you like to talk about connecting the whole interregnum? And the inbuilt question is, Ravi Shankar mentioned the Yamuna, which is flowing past the Red Fort and is now a dirty strip of water. Hyderabad has its Musi, which is a Ganda Nala now.
Absolutely.
So any observation?
See, I'll tell you one thing. Like one of my friends conducts heritage walks. So people go there and they see a city whose description when he's giving, it is not there, right? So the Qutub Shahi tombs, the tombs of the kings had a crescent of gold. Now those crescents are not there. Some of the domes had blue tile work. So we have lost all these things. So we wanted to know like how these cities existed at that point of time. So maybe it was not a conscious effort, but we would like to know, right? In the sense when something is really decaying, we want to know how it used to look better. Like suppose you recently, Ratan Tata posted a photograph of how he used to look in his younger days, right? So he looks like a film star. right? So in today, like for example, in Hyderabad, if you go to the old city or Golconda, it is a maze of shanty town and littered garbage. We don't care about it because the present policy makers, they are not interested in that. Hopefully when they read a book like this, they will understand, oh, this can be preserved, this can be salvaged. And they will have that pang that Aray Musi or the Jamuna need not be nalas and all that, they can be improved. And it won't take great amount of effort to improve them. It is just lack of knowledge and information and the greed for money that is turning our cities into this. And we all have a stake in our cities.